Super Mario Maker was released on Steam a few months back to some mixed response. The game has received some unfortunate changes in its move off the Nintendo platform. It doesn't have all its features of the original game, with a somewhat more limited tile and object set, some tweaks to the game mechanics and a more awkward control scheme, and the entire Mario character and Mushroom Kingdom world has been stripped from it to give us Rabbit Person and the Super Carrot. Oh, and this has a different name, enemies, art style, music and developer. BoxMaker, developed by Silver Moon Internet and Squiggles, is a rather shameless attempt at copying the Super Mario Maker formula, right down to a very similar interface and almost identical level transitions. The game is presented in two parts, the first of which is in edit mode for people to create their own levels, with a decent selection of terrains, level objects and enemies to choose from. One major benefit this has over Super Mario Maker is that it has all of the items unlocked from the start, meaning you can jump right in designing the levels you want, rather than waiting for new item sets each day, or spamming levels with thousands of coins to force it to jump forward with new stuff. Then you have the play section, which allows you to play your own saved maps, upload them for the world to play, or play levels that others have uploaded. Levels available from the community consist of nice musical romps through a series of bouncy note blocks and auto-moving platforms, various copies of Mario Brothers maps, even I did a 1-1 remake just to test the game's features out, and Satan's Nightmares converted into Kaizo-like levels designed to test your patience and skill. The editor part of the game should actually feel pretty familiar to anyone who's played Super Mario Maker, with an almost identical interface to select your blocks and place them into the game world. What it lacks, however, are any selection tools or shortcut keys to manipulate what is already on the level, instead requiring you to delete and place objects manually. The ability to give new variations of the same object by shaking them isn't here either, no turning one enemy type into another enemy type by giving it a little wiggle, or just trying to make it throw up. Of the few improvements made over the Mario Maker formula, this game allows you to have a total of 3 environments in one level, a main level where the level completion portal is, and 2 sub-levels that can have different environments, giving the main level some extra variety when needed. Mario Maker only allowed a single sub-level, making more complex maps impossible to do, though neither that or this game have anything on the kind of levels modders have been making for years on Super Mario World hacks, or the likes of Super Mario Bros. X. It would be nice to see Silver Moon Internet implement the feature to put your own number of sub-levels, user-defined, so we can use as many as we want. Now, actually playing the game is where the improvements end. Considering what it's obviously drawing inspiration on, the game doesn't play much the same. This game's bunny protagonist can only jump a measly 3.5 blocks high compared to Mario's 5 or so depending on the game. There's also no dedicated run button, instead you double tap to begin sprinting in a direction, which is awkward controls for most fighting games, let alone trying to do it in a platformer with a line of rockets chasing you through a pixel-perfect obstacle course of death pits and spikes. Power-ups are severely limited too, the only power-up being a bubble shield which lets you take a single hit before death. At least this makes many of the game's events quite simple to design, as you don't need to worry about players making the game too easy with a stray fire flower power-up, but it leaves the level design a little lacking in flavour sometimes. Plus there's nothing more cathartic than obliterating a pit full of approaching Goombas with a myriad of fireballs. Unfortunately they went the route of fake difficulty and provided a few options for that as well. Mario has had invisible blocks since its first instalment, and by the time Super Mario World hacks were a popular thing, there were plenty of nasty ways to use these to ruin a player's ability to jump. This adds in more anti-fun mechanics such as a block that looks like a normal block, until you touch it and it's revealed to be a spike, instantly killing you. There's no way of avoiding these traps without replaying the level and remembering their location, which takes away from the fast-paced, reactive platforming aspect a little bit. Enemies also have some quite unforgiving hitboxes, where they're slimmer than a block's width but cannot be easily clustered together, and even brushing against the side of something will result in taking a hit a lot of the time, which makes dealing with the larger enemies a bit more difficult than it should be, and it makes lining bounces on enemies a little bit tougher, especially with how thin a lot of them are. Graphics-wise, the game does an okay job at least presenting the world, with a few fairly detailed backdrops and some decent selection of block types to keep the levels looking more varied, and while enemies have those terrible shapes to them, they're not half bad, though I will admit the art style leaves something to be desired. Onto music and sound, they aren't all that great. The music isn't anything memorable, certainly not something that you could hum along to while playing. Unlike the rest of the game, none of the tracks are all that reminiscent of the Mario Bros. Games, for example. And then there's the sound effects, which are literally just ripped from the Mario Bros. Games and put up in a slightly higher pitch. And also, tell me if you recognise this track. In all honesty, it's really not that bad a game, especially considering its utterly tiny price. It's fairly well put together, at least for what it is. There's not too many glitches as far as I could find. Considering the game when I bought it was a mere £2.79, I was able to get a good few hours of amusement for that money just messing around with the levels like I would on Mario Maker, and there's just enough people playing it that there's a good variety of levels to choose from on the online features. BoxMaker then is a cheap platforming game with a fully fledged editor, with some decent ideas and relatively polished interface, but is ultimately bogged down by poor controls, incorrectly pilfered platforming mechanics, and just overall being a worse version of Super Mario Maker. Ordinarily I wouldn't be able to consider recommending it, but for its price I have to admire its sheer commitment to stealing Mario Maker's thunder. That and the fact it appears to have received a couple of updates since release to address some of the issues its bad reviews had mentioned, mainly to do with things like controller support. Perhaps if this game receives a few more updates and maybe a closer feature set to Mario Maker, I can give it a higher recommendation. For an unheard of company with a single game to their name on Steam, BoxMaker is an amusing little distraction for fans of Mario Maker, and I hope that they not only continue to supply updates, although they haven't fucking done any since September, but that they also aren't attacked by Nintendo's legal team in the near future. But at this time, I can't recommend this game at all. I actually had something different to say at the end here about the game, but I was going to say that if you've got a bit of Steam Wallet cash, it might be worth getting. However, now the game doesn't work. I think the online servers for it have gone down. They've shown no sign of actually fixing it in 5 days since recording this, and it just won't let you get into the game at all. So don't get it, don't buy it, don't waste your £2.80, because you'll just buy a game that you can't actually get access to. Oh wait, no, it's working again.